what I want to do is do a wrap-up of the leadership section of the conference so that we can then transition into the two customer keynotes, and then we'll plan on ending promptly by 3:30 or earlier, if I can. And so by way of wrap-up, I just go back and say, if we take a look at the leadership, at the roadmap and the leadership track, we've been looking specifically at best practices in this area. And this is our first conference where we did a panel organized around, a particular track to try to convey to you some of the best practices that were going on in each one of those 7 processes. And, I really think that the panel members did a great job of, doing that in the shortest amount of time. We really put some constraints on them because we knew that the discussion would go long. And I think in future conferences, if your feedback is good on the panel session, we always send out surveys and look at the feedback and then do improvement, around the conference schedule and everything when we do that. And we get very good feedback on these conferences so we can tell which sessions were better and which sessions weren't so good and so forth. It's on this particular thing, I know everybody has told us they want to do more roadmap focused kinds of learning and sharing of best practices. So on this one, I would say we're probably going to have to relook at the timing, because I know myself I could have gone another 30 to 45 minutes with overall questions for the panel. Just having that panel up there as a resource was really tremendous, and so we'll take a new look at how we do that in the future if your feedback is otherwise generally good on the panel session. But here we focused on one track and on 7 processes, and now you should have a much better view of how those 7 processes create a high-performing leadership system, all the way from planning and developing a focus to communicating that focus out into the workforce and out into the company, to setting up a continuous performance review system and reviewing organizational performance, including things like balanced scorecards and so forth, and including doing stand-up meetings with cells and integrating the workforce into the review system, and then going on to continuous improvement, where we continuously look at our measures and performance plans and spin off improvements that we want to make, and those may be Kaizen events or projects or other continuous improvement activities, and including the review of process owner performance, of course, and then moving on to workforce development and taking our priorities for improvement and building those into a workforce development plan. And of course, you heard more than one speaker mention, 5% of the workforce or available work hours were going into training and improvement activities, and that's really our benchmark. If we find companies that are putting 5% of available hours, we know we're really going to see some fast acceleration in terms of improvement. Most people are down under 2%, and most companies. And, in the Baldrige, a lot of times we were used to seeing 40 to 80, even 100 hours per employee per year. Our 5% is effectively 2 hours a week per employee. So it's not, it's not far off of that benchmark. Brent, I don't know if you have anything current on that, but that's, last time I looked, that was kind of what we were seeing. Yeah, and so 115, the workforce development integration process, involves management in really targeting that training and development to make sure it's the right stuff. And then, of course, we looked at the 2 processes that make the roadmap very unique for aerospace, and that is our focus on supply chain integration. And of course, with small and mid-sized companies, our supplier management systems are not typically that mature because we're smaller companies. The way we manage suppliers, whether or not we have scorecards, whether or not we have specific processes for interfacing with our suppliers, it's kind of a crapshoot in a lot of cases. And so we got a chance to see that it is possible to create more mature systems, within a smaller supplier. And Our customers are looking for integrated solutions from us. So certainly 1-2-1, is our focus on that. And finally, Kenny lobbied for a long time to add 1-3-1 new product startup, and he convinced everybody, and we got it into the roadmap, and that became process number 7. And I think it's very appropriate. Our customers have continuously tried to improve the new product startup process with us, and some of them are better than others. But with our competencies in this area, we can meet them more than halfway. And so that collectively, fills out 7 processes that we think represents a world-class, high-performing leadership system. And you heard a lot of people tell you that you just can't focus on operational excellence and expect the company to be a high-performing company. Too hard to sustain with only one leg of the stool, of the 3-legged stool. So that's what we did, during the conference and all day today. And there's a lot of resources on the C website to support every one of these processes and implementing them. But what I want to kind of talk about is more, if you've already got the process in place or you're just starting off, to kind of talk about some underlying things that really allow you to be, kind of the foundation for success. And I want to talk about in the context of managing change. And, implementing a formal system is, in a lot of ways, a big change. Because if you look at the question, what works for a small to mid-sized aerospace supplier, formal or informal systems, I'll bet I get kind of a mixed bag on that. We like to stay informal. You'll hear that a lot, in aerospace. We don't like to make things formal. But on the other hand, we've got the pressures from, our customers and AS9100 to document everything, So we're always continually battling between formal and informal systems. And so to implement a more formal leadership system is, in some ways, a change. And establishing a high-performance leadership system maximizes performance, therefore desirable, but it's establishing a high-performance leadership system, it's usually a change, and therefore effective management requires certain elements to be successful. And here are a number of elements that you might consider as success factors for implementing a high-performing leadership system. A number of things that we look at in terms of change management. For instance, creating a sense of urgency. A lot of times the management team needs to know that it's urgent that we implement something or make a change, and why that is. And a lot of times in C we say, take a look at what the changes that have gone on in our customers, high-speed production, consolidating the supply chain, the continuous pressure on cost, all of those things, creates a certain urgency for us to change. Institutionalizing new approaches, empowering employees, creating a guiding coalition. Creating a guiding coalition is getting together a group of managers who all believe that the change is necessary, right? So it might be 2 or 3. I don't know what the size of a coalition needs to look like, but you get the idea. It's a number of people in the management team that really need to support this. And sometimes it's not just the management team, but it's also, unofficial leaders within the organization. The skeptics who really command a lot of power, unofficial power within the organization. So it's that coalition, sometimes it makes or breaks the change effort. And of course, we've heard about creating vision and values and sharing that. Creating action plans, obviously, and schedules makes things happen. And recognizing wins. We heard from several of the speakers on the panel that they make it a requirement to hear report outs from Kaizens and report outs from graduations, and formally recognize everything in the improvement system as a win. And then, of course, sponsoring change. There's a need for an ongoing mechanism for keeping things going. You can't just kind of start it up and then say, okay, now you guys are on your own. It takes continuous leadership sponsorship, and that's why you heard several comments from the panel members about leadership being involved in sponsoring the effort. For instance, you heard that on 121, supply chain integration, and you would have heard it as well on all the other processes. So every one of the leadership processes, of course, involves the management team. So all of these are elements that you may or may not think of as important to your change effort, and I wonder how you would prioritize these, because that's important in revitalizing a leadership system. Now, I got these from a well-known work on leadership, and I'll share that work with you in a minute and show you what his recommendation was, but I'd like to hear from you as a group in terms of how you would prioritize these. So what I would ask you to do for a minute is at your table, and if you don't have at least 4 people at the table, then I would ask you to maybe combine with some others. If you two folks perhaps could combine with the table behind you, and then young lady in the back, if you would combine with the table, please, maybe over here. And let's just get tables that have at least 4 people at them. Could you do that now, please? Who can we get here? Can we combine, like the table at Brent's at, can we combine you folks with this table over here? Or, yeah, either way. Get a piece of paper and get yourself a team spokesperson or a table spokesperson. So pick somebody to speak for the table. This is going to be short. It's not going to take a long time. But get somebody to write for the table. Who needs more time? Okay, good. I'm going to. Okay, so here's your instructions. At your table, take these elements that you see on the screen, or add some if you don't feel that there's something really important about implementing or managing a change. Then add some if you like, but take the ones that are on the screen at least, and put them in priority or sequential order. What do you do first? What should you do second? What should you do third? I want to hear back from each table spokesperson what your ideas are about which of these things should come first, second, third. Any questions about any of these items on the screen? Anybody wonder what that item is? Want to hear more about it? I'm not going to assume it's self-explanatory, so raise your hand if you need to ask a question. Okay, good. Any questions about the instructions? Okay, then let me give you, is 10 minutes long enough? Okay, not to exceed 10 minutes. Do it faster if you can. Go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to ask spokesperson for each table to give me the top 3. Give me your first 3. Starting over here.
Our first 3, we felt like we had to create a sense of urgency to get the ball moving. Then we felt like we needed to create a guiding coalition. And then after that, can't read my own writing, sorry. Create the vision and the values.
Okay, so sense of urgency, guiding coalition, vision and values.
Yes.
Thank you. Over here. Oh, right here? Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Is this on? Okay.
No.
So we came up with the creative vision and values because it starts with an idea first.
Okay.
After you have that, you want to share your vision and then proceeded with create an action plan.
Okay. So vision, values, share it, and action plan. Okay, so they jumped over the urgency and the coalition, right? Very good. Back here?
Yeah, our first three was to create the vision, then share the vision, and create the sense of urgency.
Okay, so almost with these guys, you had the same
Similar.
first two, but then you varied on creating the sense of urgency. You did create a sense of urgency in the top three.
Yes, third one.
That's probably because they come from a company that everybody's very urgent, so they don't create a sense of urgency. What are we talking about? Very good, thank you. And over here.
Create vision and values, and then share the vision, and then create your guiding coalition.
Okay, very similar here. We're getting a lot of vision and values and sharing those in the top two. Interesting, huh?
We have create the vision and the values. Then we deviate a little bit. We have create the guiding coalition and then share the vision.
Okay, but still, top three still have, kind of the same flavor as these groups. So very good, thank you.
Well, the coalition between Graco and NPC Industries have a different approach in prioritizing these change elements. Our first priority is to understand customer needs and the industry's priorities. That was our number one. The next one is to create a vision and values. Once that's deployed, we create a guiding coalition. Those are our top three.
Yeah, so we didn't even have the customer needs, so you added that one on. You just did that because we have customers in the room. You guys like that, right? Yeah, see, the only smart table in the room. Very good. Thanks for adding that on. And back here.
My team reached consensus that the first one was visions and values, then shared vision, and then sense of urgency.
Yeah, very good, okay. There seems to be some degree of consensus in the room over vision, values, sharing those. How about over here?
Yeah, and the table with the airframer and Tier 1 pretty much had the same thing. We broke the entire project into three phases. And the first phase was the vision and values, and then sharing that vision, the guiding coalition, and then we also in phase one had creating the sense of urgency.
Okay, very good, thank you. Well, thank you all. So you can see that we had some degree of consensus. There was one group that put coalition and urgency out in front, but for the most part, you had vision and values and sharing those in the top three, with slight modification here for adding the customer, making sure the customer is tied into our vision and values. And nobody's going to argue with being customer driven. So, very good. John Cotter, you may have read Leading Change way back when, a Harvard professor who has written a number of books, The Heart of Change, What Leaders Really Do, Sense of Urgency. How many people have read one or more of the books on this list? Yeah. So it generally considered to be a leading authority, somebody who did his research on leadership. And here's how he organized the step-by-step plan. A sense of urgency, a guiding coalition, and then the vision. And the reason why our consensus is off is because we see the vision and communicating it as part of the buy-in process. See? And so we use that to gain buy-in across the company and to form our guiding coalition. But what John Cotter's saying is that without the guiding coalition, in other words, the true believers, to start it, the true believers who say, this vision is mine and I'm going to make it happen in this company no matter what, then we start out kind of weak. So one way that suggests itself to revitalize our leadership effort is to take another look at our guiding coalition, the true believers, and make sure we've got a critical mass of true believers. And this is true of projects as well as companies. Anytime the number of true believers drops below a certain level, you start having difficulty because there's not enough people, not enough true believers to unofficially and informally behind the scenes convince everybody that this is the right thing, you know? And you know, of course, the grapevine and, you know, the rumor mill are always out there talking behind the scenes about why is this crazy and why this won't work and why don't we go back to the old way and all that. So the guiding coalition is part of your, you know, informal defense system behind the scenes that helps you when you're not on stage and in front of a bunch of people and, you know, and we're just talking about whether or not this is working. So, you know, perhaps that's why he suggested that. It suggests to us that we can go back and take another look at guiding coalition. In addition, we have to renew the sense of urgency in our companies, you know, all the time. It isn't something that you can do just once. You've got to give people, you know, sense of urgency to me is the why. Why are we having to do this? Why do we need to accelerate our rate of improvement? Why do we need to, you know, do this new thing? You know, what is the driving force for us to make another change and keep making changes? Why do we keep reinventing ourselves? Used to be we only reinvent ourselves every 5 years. Now we're reinventing ourselves every year. And now you're talking about reinventing ourselves monthly. You know, why are you doing that? And if it's just the CEO standing up in front of the management team and saying, you know, we need to change, you know, that isn't enough to drive the change. I mean, sure, you can ask for compliance, but you don't want compliance, right? When you get compliance, then you get the, you know, you get just what you paid for. You get compliance, but you don't get the heart. So what you want is true believers, people that say, yes, I understand why we're doing this. I understand the urgency, and I'm behind it. You know, and if you've got that critical mass or that coalition of people that really believe in why we need to make this change, and, you know, across your entire company, if you don't have that critical mass that believes in 100% on time and 0 ppm, you're never going to get there. As a matter of fact, you're never even going to get people to try to get there. And I think the whole point is trying to get there, not necessarily whether you get there or not. I mean, you know, each of us has differences in our industry, and there are different, you know, factors at play for 0, you know, 100% and 0. And when Philip Crosby came out and said, you know, 0 defects and quality is free, you know, a lot of people didn't believe it, right? You know, it wasn't necessarily believable. But those companies who believed in it and had a critical mass of believers, you know, obviously went to a whole new level. So it's not necessarily achieving 100% and 0, but it's having the critical mass that believes that you should be working towards 100% and 0. And that has to do with a sense of urgency. And, you know, in C, what we focus on is what's going on in the industry that creates a sense of urgency. In 2002, we had 50,000 U.S. suppliers. In 2009, we had 30,000 U.S. suppliers. If you look at a map of all the consolidations in the industry just at the prime and tier 1 level, you know, you see what this industry does. We're going to be at 15,000 U.S. suppliers before you know what happened. And we're still well on the way there. So that's one thing. In an environment where there's fewer suppliers, there's a lot more competition. And so, you know, what's the competition going to be based on? If it's not based on what's important to the customer, what will it be based on? You know, I don't think it'll be based on relationships. So what will it be based on? I think it will be based on track record of performance and a you know, a visible display of a commitment to improvement. And so C is fundamentally based on the idea that we've got to not only be improving measurably, but we've got to show our customers that we're committed to that. We're investing resources, time, and money in improving. So that's one source for a sense of urgency, is our supply chains consolidating. And even though Doug and Mario and others have shared numbers with you that show that the industry is on the upswing, that doesn't mean that the supply chain isn't consolidating. You know, our customers have got a different idea about how to do this. And that's going to create competition. and only the strongest survive, and you got to understand what strong means. What is that? Another thing that creates a sense of urgency is just the fact that our customers are going to moving production lines and high-speed assembly, and the cost of a stock out, or the cost of a defective part in that environment is 1,000 times more. 1 minute on a production line for an aircraft that takes 6 months to build doesn't matter. The cost of 1 minute is, who cares? But the cost of 1 minute, in a production line that's going to build an aircraft in 4 days is enormous. And so the whole game has changed because of dollars. It costs too many dollars. And of course, our customers want to be high-speed assemblers. They want to bring, materials in, bolt them onto an aircraft just in time, out the door, all high-speed, no inventory. Supply chain delivers to that demand. And so that's what's driving, why do they want to do that? Well, what's the Department of Defense want from us? What do the commercial airlines need from us? It's simple to see why they want to do that. We just have to realize that demand isn't going to go away, right? It's going to continue to increase, and it's all driven by dollars. So that means it won't go away. And that means that what we're doing suddenly has become, when we fail, has suddenly become a lot more expensive to our customers. And so that's why we had a discussion about chargebacks and a lot of other mechanisms where we start shifting the cost back down to processes that haven't been designed to be error-free. And so our whole focus in C is on processes and designing and managing processes, maturing processes. And that's our sense of urgency. If we can tell our whole company a couple of reasons why this is urgent and it's not going to go away, and it's part of our continuation plan as a company, then we've got a sense of urgency. We have to keep renewing that. So I think that's why Cotter put those at 1 and 2, but certainly he agrees with you that you've got to create and communicate a vision. And that was a consensus by and large from the room, is to create and communicate a vision. And that vision, there was questions today about how often do you renew that vision? How many times do you come back and revisit it? One time I was working with Ingram Micro, one of the big integrators of systems, back in the days, they were probably along the lines of Dell Computer. And every month they would revamp their goals and their vision for the business, relook at it, and then filter it down through changes in incentives to every single person in the company. And a lot of people thought that was very aggressive to try to do that on a monthly basis. But the business was moving so fast and the business was changing so fast, they want to be able to recognize quickly that, things had changed, and they want to be able to adapt to those much more quickly. Whether or not we need to renew our vision that often is a question of how fast do we think things are changing. But certainly the action plans and performance plans and things that come underneath that are things that in the C environment with some of the processes we looked at, 113 and 114, we really want to be looking at those often and monitoring our plans and seeing how they're going and then putting in continuous improvement and correction. So that's John Cotter's list. Doesn't disagree with us that much, but it suggests some areas for going back and looking at your implementation of your leadership system. It asks you to go back and look and say, have I been creating a sense of urgency at a high enough level for everybody to explain why we're doing this? And have I established a strong guiding coalition, a group of managers who are really true believers in this, so that I'm not the only one out there waving the flag? And if you find that any of those things are weaker than you'd like, then it might give you a tremendous boost in terms of implementing your leadership system to take action on one of those top items. And if it's been a while since your vision has been looked at and developed and worked on by the guiding coalition that you have, then it's a good opportunity to go back and say, let's take another look at that. And in that way, renew and reinvigorate your leadership system. Okay, questions or comments before I move on? Comments, questions? Okay, so we're about to move from the conversation about leadership. That's the last thing that we can give you today is the 7 processes, the best practices, and how to reinvigorate that system if you already have it. We're about to move from that into the last part of our day, which is our customer keynotes.